Hi, welcome. Well, tonight we're very lucky. We have Ted Capstick, esoteric astrologer, and he's going to talk to us about the Virgo full moon, and especially the Virgo full moon at the moment in 2020, and some insights into what that can mean for us. And then when he's finished, we'll follow with a group meditation and a chance for discussion. So I'll hand it over to you, Ted.
Okay, thank you. Right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to talk with some feeling tonight about the archetype that is present in Virgo and the ramifications it should have on our individual psyches, as the uncovering or discovering of the divine feminine in my own psyche has been part of my soul's purpose in this life. And we can perhaps see that in some kind of perspective when we think that the masculine, divine masculine, can be seen as will and the divine feminine as love, or as we will probably know it more, spirit and matter. And we will link this to the seed thought of Virgo full moon as we go through. But I would like to start with some general considerations of the sign and the energy of Virgo. It is a most significant sign in that at its essence, it concerns the entire process of the goal of evolution. To initially shield and then to nurture and finally to reveal the hidden spiritual reality, which was beautifully described by the English master Robert Browning as the imprisoned splendor. Now, every form hides a spiritual reality, but man can make God's plan for a kingdom on earth, which reflects spiritual principles, the most tangible, because he is in the position with his vehicles of consciousness, as we shall see, to do this, and very much an intermediary between hierarchy and the lower kingdoms. Virgo is dual. It is the matter aspect of the creation, but it also veils the Christ life or soul principle. And as people know, I'm a student of the school of Alice Bailey, who makes it very clear through her work with the Tibetan Dwaj Khul, the Master Dwaj Khul, that we should realize that the Christ within us is indeed our soul. And this gives a connectivity to everybody's soul. And it's based at the heart center, something which our host knows an awful lot about, and which I won't make too many comments because I won't be there. St. Paul in the New Testament said, Christ in you, the hope of glory. We're not talking here about the Christian religion per se, although that is embraced by it or partly embraced by it. We're talking about the Christ principle here, which Rudolf Steiner enumerated in many, many brilliant books, in my opinion, and he called it the Christ impulse. The saving impulse that actually, if we cannot contact through our hearts, we are not going to get in touch with any type of spiritual principle. Now, esoteric science teaches that this Christ is within every human heart. And the seed note of the full moon of any Virgo festival is, I am the mother and the child. I, God, I, matter, am. And this is the reference I understand to be between the transcendent or the spiritual pole and the matter pole. There has to be a link. And this sign of Virgo is incredibly important. And just as a brief aside, in esoteric astrology, I see the presence in women's charts of Virgo, which is very often symbolized as the mother and child with the father removed, as being something that the soul uses to take the male influence away, and it can be the father in the early life, and it can be partners and relationships in later life, to the extent that the soul, known as the Father in heaven, seems to find it easier to get hold of the consciousness of this particular lady if the physical, emotional, mental male influence is pushed away. And this is highly divine. This is something which is very subtle. And I've seen it with Virgo rising, and I've seen it with planets in Virgo. And I had one yesterday afternoon where the woman cannot understand why it should be that there should be isolation from something that's a personality she needs to complete herself, but is being, and it is a sure sign that the person is on the spiritual path. And so we're looking here at a duality in Virgo that actually is a unity if we look at the total polarity. I've anticipated myself. Part of the symbolism of Virgo is the idea of the Virgin Mother, the Virgin founder of the matriarchy, which was an archetype of the Atlantean age, which was, people think of the Atlantean age as being dark. Yes, it was in part. Yes, they were participants in black magic. But the cream of the Atlanteans were warned about the cataclysms, which was the final sinking, was the island of Poseidon. And they made their way across to Egypt. And then John Gordon, really in great detail, goes into his book. He says Egypt was a child of Atlantis. And it was very strongly feminine. It was to do with water. It was destroyed by water. It was to do with the opening of the solar plexus so that the energy could be raised to the heart. And we see in time that we've moved on from there, but they took it so far, and there was a lot of good, and it was part of what we all had to go through. Now, Virgo treads the path as spiritual man is seen to emerge from the control of matter. How much do we think we've emerged from the hold of matter? And it's an interesting point because, in my spiritual diary, I've had reflections when I thought I was free of it, and then something happens and we're not. And when I say matter, I mean the pull of the material, particularly the emotional and the physical. Now, it's very, very interesting that the integration of the personality can be linked to the three virgins, which themselves are symbols of Virgo. We have Eve, we have Isis, and we have Mary, representing this idea that in the sign of Virgo, there's something very, very important about the feminine side of evolution, which we must perceive or at least understand part of. Because my understanding is that each of these beings have their corresponding energy in a vehicle of consciousness of the personality. So we'll be talking about the mental, emotional, and physical body. And indeed, as part of the integration of that physical body, of that personality body, physical, emotional, and mental, it's a prerequisite for the expression of the Christ energy within. The Christ energy within is so pure and so refined. They're both qualities of the sign of Virgo, that unless we get our personalities refined to an appropriate extent, we're not going to be able to bring down the divinity that is required of us. If we go back with Eve, Eve is concerned with the mental body. It was Eve, if you remember, who took the apple of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, and we began as mankind the descent from the subjective spiritual into the objective material. We've got really caught up with the objective material now, but groups like ourselves are realizing that there is this journey back, but we had to come down, because in eating of the fruit of good and evil, the understanding of good and evil, and that knowledge that came from that tree, we were objective to something else. And it was Eve who started the process. And there can be commentary about what Eve was and what this was, but in my understanding, this is part of the archetype of Virgo. And then there's Isis, who corresponds to the astral nature and represents at best the desire of all nations to come together in cooperation and brotherhood, because they desire to, because there is, not just at the solar plexus, but in the heart, a real need to get together. And then, of course, Mary corresponds to the physical incarnation and the birth of the Christ child, and hence the physical plane. So these three aspects of personality can be defined in terms of the divine feminine through these feminine beings. They have to be brought together and synthesized for the Christ principle to be fully expressed in a life. In other words, Virgo represents the total integration of these three feminine aspects. The male cannot do it on their own. It is quite clear from these teachings around Virgo that we have to, whatever we're dipped into in this life, be it physical, and we know we've had other lives, that this is part of our psyche now. We're talking psychologically. Is our thinking male? Is our thinking female? And it's very interesting for me that these are things that have been shown to me as almost alien. So maybe I've come off the back of a number of male lives where the psyche was very, very male and will was developed very, very strongly. And in others, the love can be developed very, very strongly. And it's the will that needs to be developed. And that can happen. We can see this. Virgo then also conveys the ideas of deepness, darkness, quiet, and warmth, and has been referred to, those qualities as referred to as existing in something that will be called the womb of time, where it's the birthplace of divine love and wisdom in embryo form, but only through activity, human activity in time and space, which has been quickened through the work of the great avatars, the Buddha on the wisdom aspect and the Christ on the love aspect, with the goal, which is the birth of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And it's a very clear delineation of the plan and the role that the feminine has to play in this, but we can take it a bit further. If we consider that love is the energy of relationship, and in one form, this is very much taught by the Lucis Trust and the Alice Bailey School, the Arcane School, which I've studied with, the energy of goodwill. And this goodwill connects the human family in a great web of love. It's there, but we've got to spin that web. Just as a spider builds a web of beauty and considerable strength, we humans have to build a networking consciousness of 5 threads. This links with my talk recently on the Rainbow Bridge, but 2 of these, the life thread to the sinus node of the heart from the monad, and the consciousness thread to the cortex of the brain from the soul, are 2 of them. They're provided for us in this life, but the other 3 threads are woven by man on the physical plane when he becomes a conscious creator and knows how to move energy. And again, I'm going to be careful here. I'm on Teresa ground, moving energy from the solar plexus to the heart, to the brow, and finally to the crown, and the opening of the 1,000-petaled lotus. And that's why Teresa, and anybody that works with yoga, is really understanding the increase in vibration that is required when we are seeking to become creative. We have to first be aware of energy in these centers and how our own energy is being used by the various centers. And that's why we use the word creator. We have energy, but unconsciously and automatically we might be splaying it in all different directions without really understanding what we're doing with it. And I've not studied yoga in great depth, but I know its importance to me has always come when I've had feeling at the centers. And one day Teresa will help me with it. The 3 ruling planets of Virgo, bit of astrology, are Mercury, the orthodox ruler. Every sign has 3 and they go up in vibrational terms. orthodox rulership, those people on the path of involution, still coming down, still involving in matter, and predominantly concerned with the energies of the personality. The orthodox ruler is Mercury. Mercury rules the mind, and we're going to see how the mind needs to reflect these divine feminine principles. The moon, the esoteric ruler, the one I will use in astrology, veils a planet. And what it means is there's a very strong planet behind it, Vulcan. And it's interesting here because we can bring in some rays. What the moon will do, it will bring crises into our life through the fourth ray of harmony, through conflict. But it will give us a remedy if we look for it. If we look behind the energy of the moon, we will find the energy of Vulcan. And Vulcan is said to be first ray, which will, if we invoke it, and we have to invoke it, like the great invocation, the will, if we invoke the power, it will give us spiritual staying power to get through the crises. And we have it in the language. Well, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This idea that we go through it and we get a staying power. And that is part of the idea that we are lifting ourselves from matter. In order to lift ourselves from matter, we have to be experienced in every single form of matter. And then we have to redeem ourselves from it. And Vulcan is a sacred planet, whereas the moon is not, according to Alice Bailey. And Vulcan will be able to pick us up and take us along, again, if we invoke it again, if we're knowledgeable about the importance of the will factor. So I call it, Vulcan invokes the endurance aspect of the will to be. You know, we've mentioned goodwill in relation to the heart. There is the will to good in relation to the plan and Shambhala, and there is the will to be, which is the presence of spirituality in humanity in whatever situation. That will to be, and to be constant and enduring and say, I am. And in so many of these invocations, we have I am. So the will to be, or another phrase for it I use, is the continuity of effort. Yeah, it's just maybe, oh, I'll do something on a Saturday and Sunday. When you're on the path, as we all know here, because we all are, we know there's a constant effort required, A, to overcome the crises, and B, to overcome our lower nature in reacting to these crises as we tread the path of discipleship, which inevitably leads to initiation, because we are being impelled along an evolutionary path where actually we have less control as we go along it. In fact, we invoke and we get given. And then when we get given, we have to deal with the energy. Spiritual people have to deal with a lot more energy and handle a lot more energy than those who don't invoke it. It's like saying, be careful what you wish for. Jupiter, finally, the hierarchical ruler, the divine builder, can be called the love of God, will appear in the age of Aquarius, when brotherhood and cooperation have been established on the earth. As humans, we can go one of two ways: deeper into materialism or onto spiritual liberation. But for the latter, we have to pierce the veil of illusion first. And as Finian knows, I've been looking at the Bible a lot more recently and being headed towards quotes. Another one, I think it is spoken of, this piercing of the veil of illusion in the New Testament. And the veil of the temple was rent from top to bottom. And when you see the context of that, I think you will perhaps agree that this is to do with the fact that we have to see through this illusory nature, which is difficult because the brain makes it seem so acute. There's an acuity and a reality that the sense world gives us, and a comfort. We can touch things and we can see things. But we have to step beyond that. And we will step beyond it when we start to feel that there is something greater that we need. I must be about my Father's business. Probably something else from the Bible there. And so to finish, I would like to say the reappearing Christ, the expression of the love principle, will result in brotherly love, group consciousness, cohesion, synthesis, and humanity will be raised out of the tomb of matter. Only then the hidden divinity, the Christ in us, will finally be fully revealed. And to bring it to where we are in this place, I do believe that world events are bringing us to a crossroads where we have to make a decision. Are we going to go along with the emotionality of it, which is very much personality, and see a cause and react emotionally with that mass consciousness of Cancer? Are we going to say, wait a minute, I've got an individual thought about this, and I think a better way forward is, and that's the Leo consciousness. And finally, in Aquarius, we can look round and find our brothers and sisters on the path, people in Teresa's group and other groups who as individuals think like-mindedly. We don't give up our individual thought or the value of it, but we look around like birds of a feather flocking together and say, I feel comfortable with those ideas and those ways of working. And that's what we are exhorted to do, to find those groups where we can feel a cohesive part of and contribute to and be contributed back with something, to receive something back. And in that principle of sharing, I believe that the higher planet of Virgo, Jupiter, is something very beautiful to look forward to. And so I perhaps in the last few years of all of the full moons have come to regard this one as very precious to myself. So I hope that's a little outline of the quest and goal of Virgo as seen through my understanding of it. Okay, thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you, Ted. And if anybody has any questions or further insights or discussion, we can leave those till after the group meditation. We'll come back to those. So if you just get yourself comfortable, and we'll just prepare for this group meditation. And I want to bring us together by repeating the affirmation of love. So just have an intention that you're joining from your heart with this group and with all groups of like-minded, like-hearted people of goodwill who are working in this way. And repeat, either listen to me or repeat quietly to yourself or silently to yourself this affirmation of love. In the center of all love I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Now get yourself comfortable. Ideally, you want to be upright without your back being rigid. Just let everything that Ted was talking about go for now. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And we'll begin by connecting with this planet Earth. So I want you to imagine that you are sending energy down through the soles of your feet or through the base chakra and the base of your spine, right down like roots into the earth, so that we are grounded here in spiritual matter, connected to the earth, part of this being, this planet we call home. And now I want to bring you into this present moment. And we do this through a focus on your senses. So just notice your body sitting on the chair. Just notice the clothes on your skin. And then take your awareness to your sense of listening and just let sounds come in. So just hear the sounds of this moment. And I want you to take that awareness to your breath. Just gently watching your body breathe in, watching your body breathe out. And as you breathe, imagine that you are opening a channel right down through the very central core of your physical body. Starting this opening in the center of your chest, between your sternum, your breastbone, and your spine. Feel as you breathe a gentle opening. And as your body relaxes, feel like you're opening a channel down through the very center of your being. Until you find it comfortable to breathe from your belly. So with each breath, your physical body relaxes and your mind keeps a gentle focus on the breath. Just continue to focus on the breath. Whenever your mind is distracted by thoughts, physical feelings, by sounds, as soon as you realize, come back to the breath. Come back without judgment or criticism. Come back with loving kindness. So let the breath take you into a quiet place within you. Let it take you into a stillness. As you continue to focus on the breath, just allow thoughts to simply pass. Be aware of them coming into your mind, passing through, and passing out of your mind. Keeping your focus on the breath. Now bring your awareness to the center of your chest and imagine that as you breathe, you're breathing into your heart center. You are breathing in light and love and filling the heart with gratitude. And this will expand and open your heart center. Fill your heart with blessings. And imagine that through your heart you can connect to your very soul, to your higher aspect or higher self. Now I want you to imagine that you are bringing white or violet purple or gold light down from your higher self through the crown of your head. And this is flowing down into the major energy centers or chakras in a vertical alignment associated with your spine. Imagine this light coming in through your crown and your heart acting as a vessel to receive and distribute this light throughout your body. So let your whole physical body begin to fill with this purifying, cleansing, healing light. Strengthening your physical body and your immune system. Calming the emotions, giving poise and grace. Clearing your mind. So as your whole physical body fills with light, imagine it flowing out into the etheric body or energy field or aura that surrounds your physical body and interpenetrates it. Continue to allow this light, this lighted love to flow down through your crown into your heart, to fill your physical body, to radiate out into your aura. Now imagine it flowing out to fill your home, touching all the living beings. Let it flow now into your family and out into your street, your neighborhood, touching the hearts and minds. Now imagine this light is flowing out into your community. Now continue to let it radiate out to fill your town or your city. Imagine that the light from you is connecting with the light from all of the members of this group meditation, whether those participating live or those participating via the recording. We join together. And now let us fill this country, this nation with light, with this lighted love. Touching all hearts and minds, whether consciously or unconsciously. Let it flow out into this part of the world. Now let it flow out to fill this whole hemisphere. Continue to radiate out this lighted love until it encompasses the whole of our world. Now imagine that we join with all groups who work with light and love and the will to good in the world. And as one group together, imagine you can see our beautiful planet from space, and you can see her surrounded in this beautiful light. You can see sparks of light ignited all around the planet of those working in this way, creating a beautiful aura, a healing aura. And see this light flowing down into our planet, healing her, restoring the balance in nature. so that our air and our waters are clear and clean, pure. We have a healthy ozone layer and our planet is healing. See the animal and the plant life flourishing. And see mankind stepping into our role as custodians of these kingdoms. Now see this light flowing into the hearts and minds of all of mankind. Invoking change. Dissolving fear and doubt. Sparking love and the Christ consciousness within every single person. So that together this brings peace, goodwill, and right relations between all of mankind. Lifting our awareness and the collective consciousness so that we can envision and learn to live in peace and harmony with all. Visualize these energies unifying and eliminating all divisions within humanity, healing and transforming human consciousness, and establishing right human relations within each person, between people, within families, communities, within nations and between nations. Uniting our whole human family. Continue to hold a space in your heart and let this energy radiate out, joining with those brothers and sisters working with you. Continue to hold a space. Now I invite you to repeat the great invocation with me, the world prayer that you'll see on your screen. So as you repeat the words of each stanza, repeat them with conviction from the love in your heart for humanity, for our planet. And we'll pause between each stanza just to imagine the words playing out. So let us begin. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Now very slowly draw all of the energy back into your own energy field, your own etheric body. And just come into an awareness of your body sitting in the chair. Take a nice deep breath and just slowly opening your eyes when you're ready. Namaste. Thank you. So now we come to the part of the evening where you get to ask the questions or add some of your comments. Or there might be further aspects of Virgo that you want Ted to cover. So what I'll do is if you just let me know that you would like to speak, and then I can unmute you. Or if you don't want to be on screen, just pop your question in the chat and I will ask, or Ted can read it there. I know you're all looking a bit dazed from, it's powerful, the group meditation. I've had a few people ask me afterwards about the experience, about what they have experienced during it. And it's not unusual to find it quite an overwhelming, energetic experience when we come together in group meditation. It is something that you will adapt to, but it can be quite daunting because of its power. Right. Has anyone got any questions? No? Okay, I do. Oh, Finian, yes. Finian and then Michael. Go. So if you should be unmuted now. Oh, hang on. That might be my fault. Ah.
Good evening, Ted.
Good evening, Finian.
I was thinking when you were talking about there's a magnetic attraction, isn't there, between opposite signs?
Yes.
And I was thinking about, I work a lot with symbolism, as you know. I was thinking about the symbol of Pisces, the two fishes with their tails loosely tied by a cord.
Yep.
And I was wondering if one of those fishes on occasions might represent masculine energy and the other one represent the feminine energy.
Yes, my view would be that when we look at those fishes in Pisces, we do see that they seem to be different. They are turning away from each other. And I think that their nature is extremely different. But I love the idea of Virgo pulling out of the unconscious ruled by Pisces, everything that has to be brought to light, because Virgo requires us to plumb the depths. And the womb, astrologically, the womb of time I was talking about, would definitely be Pisces, because Pisces rules the hidden and the unknown. So I think we have here the idea that the depths have to be plumbed. And of course, there was a stage, and there will be a stage in the future, when the sexes will come together again, and we will be hermaphrodite. I think it's Lemuria, where we had the individualization of the sexes. So I would like to think that those two fishes, in on another level, do represent the idea of the fact that in the unconscious they can be, hidden, but they are two archetypes and not seen as separate things because they are hidden. But in reality, we are both masculine and feminine. And we know this right the way down to our endocrine system, where we have a balance of testosterone on the male side, estrogen on the female side. And it's just the different levels of those work together. So we do have the two within us. And those two fishes together seem to indicate we have two polarities, but they are very much tied together. So I do like that symbolism very much.
There's another thing too which comes to mind. I've been doing a lot with Kabbalistic astrology, and Virgo is an interesting one on that, because it's the new moon in Libra, which is the next sign, which marks the new year. And so what we're talking about with Virgo is the idea that if you step into the new year, you shouldn't have anything tying you that's negative to the old year. So you better tidy it up now.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing is when they think about, the Kabbalists think about the divine presence as it's on earth, it's always considered to be feminine, which is a tie-in with the goddess symbolism that you were talking about.
Yes. Yes, thank you for that. Yes, that new year is interesting. I'd not seen it in that way before. That's interesting. Thank you.
Rosh Hashanah this year, Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year.
Right.
That actually falls on the evening of the 18th of September.
Right.
Because it's when the moon becomes visible, is when they say there's the new moon. So it's a couple of days after the initial conjunction.
Right. I shall look into that. Thank you.
Michael, did you want to ask? Oh, you have to unmute. Yeah.
Hi, Ted. It's a very, very kind of general question.
Yeah.
Given that Virgo is an earth sign ruled by Mercury, do you kind of get a sense that we're going to see some kind of manifestation of kind of greater levels of communication in this kind of new period?
Yes, the idea at the, I'll call it the mass level, because it is the orthodox ruler, Mercury, but it would certainly have a strong indication to go along with the idea of communication, Mercury being the quicksilver mind, and how much is that needed at this time, and better communication as well. So I hadn't thought of it in that way. I'd moved quickly to the esoteric ruler and the hierarchical ruler, but you've brought me back to thinking about it. And I just made the comment when I mentioned Mercury about the mind. And I think with Virgo and this idea of spirit and matter and therefore duality, it's very important, and in our communications as well, that we choose the right way to reflect our minds. And what's so lovely about the work that Teresa does is, opposed to, say, study, when we are reflecting our mind outwardly on something and trying to absorb something, in the meditation, we're going inwards with the mind and working in the inner worlds with it in that way. And maybe the communication, Mike, that you refer to is going on at a subjective level as well. I would think normally of communication as an outer world experience and something that we have to affect. But I think this communication could be the greater inner communication that is required as well, as per the type of work that's being done here this evening. And the education of the human mind, that there is something else you can do with the mind other than keep projecting it onto concepts, which I spent 40 odd years of my life doing. And then you find that the inner worlds have something very different to offer. And I remember what Dwaj Kul says in Occult Meditation. He says that the most creative activity on the planet is to meditate in groups and in this occult way where we're considering the nature of energy. So thank you for that thoughtful question. Thank you.
Lovely. Tim, where have you gone?
Hello, Tim. If
you unmute yourself. Yeah.
Right, I'm unmuted now. Good evening, Ted.
Very interesting to see you, Tim. Hiya.
You as well, and all the rest of you. What I've been finding about these new moons, particularly during perhaps the last 8 or 10 years when I've been involved in theosophy and related things, is that they seem to have a much more powerful effect on me personally, both good and bad. I mean, sometimes I feel absolutely terrible with these things. Other times I'm literally over the moon with these things. The point I'd like to make, and it really follows on from what was just observed about these ideas of group meditation, you know, very, very powerful ideas. I was just actually rereading one of the articles that I wrote, which I think has been published in a number of magazines, including the New Zealand magazine, Theosophia. This is this idea that if you get the square root of 1% of the world's population to do something all in harmony, and when you work that figure out, it's actually quite small. It's about 8,000 people, the size of a very small town. It has immense potential. I mean, I don't take part in an awful lot of these group meditations, but I just found that very powerful. And it just struck me that a number of people, Alice Bailey included, have spoken about this idea of a new world religion, if we call it that, based on these full moons, plus the solstices and the equinoxes. So 16 or 17 points in the year. When we look on that just as something which is cyclic, which is something I'm very interested in, when we look at the power that even a few people can have together, we have some very, very powerful tools there in which to do things. And that's really simply the point I would like to make. And if we could orchestrate more of these meditations around the full moons, around the equinoxes, around the solstices, we could have something incredibly powerful. Because if you take the square root of 1% of the population and apply it to the UK, which has got roughly 1% of the world's population, it's 80 people. It's 80 people, which is enough people to fill, you know, a London double-decker bus. That's all it is. So often when we talk about, oh, we're not getting the numbers, we're not doing this, that, and the other, we are working with such powerful energies that we don't actually need to do it in the mass way, and we can see how powerful esoteric working can be. So that was simply the point, and I'd be interested on, obviously, on your thoughts on that.
I would like to come back on that because, as you know, I've been for many years looking into parallels between quantum physics and esoteric study. And what it seems to me, my suggestion is the explanation of what you're talking about is when we consider ourselves as human beings in a physical body, we are particular. But when we start to think and feel, and basically everything from the etheric upwards would be wavicular, we are contributing towards a giant waveform when we start, even with the 8,000 people that you're talking about, because the wavicular energy does not hold to the laws of obviously particle or classical physics. And so we're talking about building an energy, and I've seen this energy in a dream referred to by some being as a Raja soul, Raja as in Raja Yoga, being built in wavicular matter.
Yep.
And what we're doing is we're perhaps unaware of it as individuals in a group because that's our particular nature. And doesn't the world just think of it as a set of personalities in a particular nature? What you're uncovering is the fact that we are working from the etheric upwards. We are working in wavicular fashion with our feelings, our thoughts, our higher mind, our body. Wherever we go, we are dealing with, and therefore this thought form that is being built, we entangle our own thoughts with other people's thoughts, and therefore the wavelength, the waveform gets bigger. And this doesn't get destroyed, this waveform. This waveform can be directed. You know, Teresa was talking about the focus of things, you know, and looking at the planet and focusing back down on the planet. We are directing the waveform and the energy, and this is creativity at a much greater level. I don't think anybody who meditated those decades ago would have realized perhaps what I'm suggesting is that these wavicular forms are extremely strong. By the way, I think your own personal sensitivity to the moon, good or bad, is a hugely encouraging facet for you in your spiritual development, because it's only recently happened to me as well, where I do actually find that the moon, and sometimes it can be quite aggravating and irritating as well to my own thought forms, which I've now learned to accept and let them be destroyed.
Can I jump in there and just say a couple of things? When we are working, when we're working in this way in group meditation, and when we're working on very high vibrational energies, which our energies all lift each other, so that when we're working in this way, our average vibrational energy is high. We can move energy, if you like, the thought forms of hatred and fear and doubt and jealousy and power over, and all of those sort of more negative thought forms have a much more dense vibration. And then when you lift up into energies of compassion, of brotherhood, of love, of feeling at one, and wanting, loving, healing our planet, wanting people to wake up, to change, these sorts, they move on much higher vibrations. So when we all go together deep into meditation in this way, we can move energies much more easily because the vibrations are so much higher and lighter in these thought forms. And they help to dissipate that heavier thought form energy of the very material, very negative, very fearful. And even during this pandemic, if you can keep your vibrational energy high, you join what's written. I did a talk on this earlier from David Hawkins' book, Force versus Power. And he's done algorithms and calculations where he's worked out that if 15% of the population, if they hold their vibrational energy up in the higher realms, they can drag with them or raise the vibrational energy of the other 85% of humanity, whether they're consciously aware of it or not. And so when we're working in this way, we're definitely working in those higher realms and those different vibrational energies. And you'll be able to feel that. Sometimes physically, your body will respond and react to that. And the other thing I would say, from my understanding of the etheric, and my understanding of the rotation of the chakras and spiritual development, as chakras, as we progress spiritually and as we deal with those aspects of our unconscious that need to be brought into the light and healed and resolved, and as we move forward in our understanding and our intuitive wisdom, what we're doing in each of these chakras is we're allowing more energy through, because the chakras work more like a valve. It's more like they stop energy coming into us that would just be too much for our etheric body to handle. And so as we progress spiritually, there's a natural unfolding and opening of the different centers, the flowering of those lotus petals. And we can absorb, we can handle more energies coming in, and we become more sensitive to those energies. So it can have positive effects in that you become more sensitive, more intuitive, more empathetic. You can sense what's going on for other people. You become almost telepathically aware of what's going on for them. It can be negative in that if you go into a shopping center or a place of mass thought forms where the energy is negative, it can be quite harsh. But it is a sign of your spiritual development, because as those centers open, the soul can flood the etheric body with more energy, and therefore increasing the opening of the centers, increasing the energy in your system and your sensitivity. So I hope that helps. I'm just looking at the time. Ted, I have one more question for you with regard to Virgo. My understanding is that part of Virgo is stepping into the idea of service, and not just service doing good works, but the idea that service is where we bring soul energy into all aspects of our life, every single moment of every day. But especially the service as custodians of this planet, Virgo being an earth sign and a sign of service, and custodians of especially the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and the mineral kingdom. So in Virgo, we learn to step into right relations and as guardians of these kingdoms. And I just wondered if you can sort of talk a little bit more about that aspect of Virgo.
Yes, I mean, when I do astrological interpretations, I give people a sheet on the houses, and each house has got a keyword. And the keyword for the sixth house is also the keyword for the sixth sign, is I serve. And generally speaking, service is seen to be service to humanity. There is service to the hierarchy, and I'd like to just make the difference. So service to humanity, first of all. Well, actually, let's go through it. The first one is service to the personality, which has got a high degree of selfishness and self-centeredness and desire in it. And Virgo tries to purify and refine to the extent that it becomes service to humanity, and we can be involved in teaching, healing, counseling, caring where caring is needed. But we're working on the horizontal arm of the cross. It seems to be that a lot of people are doing very good, and that's covered by Virgo, and that will be covered by the Virgo and the moon. But when we get to Virgo and Jupiter is, very benign. It is linked very much to Christ consciousness in esoteric astrology, and it is the hierarchical ruler of Virgo. We're talking about service to hierarchy, which can be read as service to the plan. And that service to the plan relates to our, as you've already mentioned, in the meditation, responsibility to the other kingdoms of nature. We are endowed with a greater consciousness a degree of consciousness through our ability to think abstractly. And that gives us a great responsibility to actually lift all the other kingdoms. And what's going on here is a gradual shift from a more self-centered individual to one who is going to become selfless. And without mentioning it in there before, it's so difficult. If we are to really link with the Christ consciousness at the soul level, every minute of every day, which is what you're saying, we have to get rid of the personal and replace it with the impersonal. And to me, Virgo is that shiningness where there's nothing in it for self. As the Tibetan says, nothing for the separated self. That's hellishly difficult. Can I have my cup of tea even? You know, where did nothing for the separated self? But it's that high degree of refinement that seems to, again, Treatise on White Magic, the Tibetan says, self-forgetfulness. Service cannot properly start until we forget ourselves. Now, I know you understand that, but I would draw the line, I draw the distinction between service on the horizontal arm of the cross, which is ruled by Virgo on its own, and probably Virgo and the moon. But Virgo and Jupiter will rule that service to mankind. And I think we all have to show ourselves as worthy enough to be contacted by humanity, by a hierarchy on the vertical arm of the cross, to be given, as we say in the greater invocation. You know, somebody said to me, the incarnation serve the plan. They serve the plan. And they said, no, see the plan as a great big cake or pie. And what they do is they serve a piece of it and give it to you and say, there's your portion of the plan being served. Yes, you do serve it, but actually you get a portion. The masters know, and they serve to you a bit of it and say, here we are, Teresa, run this group, do this yoga, you know, and that's your part. But when you're ready, you'll get something else. But you have to, we have to wait, and we can't rush it, and it's their timetable. Does that help?
Lovely, lovely.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, any more comments or questions? Or are your brains full up?
I noticed that lady who I spoke to this morning has joined us, by the way.
Lovely.
Geraldine. Welcome, Geraldine.
Yeah, she's waving.
She may join other weeks, she said. She'd very like to join on other weeks, yeah.
Can I just give a plug for Finian's talk on Sunday for the Leeds Lodge, which is embarking on a series of talks, of which most of you are taking part anyway. Sunday will be the initial one, and we've attempted to do everything we can to resolve all the Zoom issues, but it may be somewhat experimental. But Finian's speaking on the Kabbalah, and it should be extremely interesting. So if you're available to join us from 2 o'clock, I think you have the links, then please do. And if you think of anybody else who might be interested as well, please invite them as well. But it's been a fascinating session, and thank you very much indeed, Ted, as always.
Yeah. And I'll reiterate, and you can see the web is building. Okay, all these things going on. The web is building for sure. So thank you all. Lots to go and consider, lots to ponder on. And thank you for joining us, because without you, it wouldn't be possible. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.